Hi, my name is Haley Johnson, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about diversity in the culinary classroom. So over the past 5 years, I have had the opportunity to travel overseas and within the United States to many different cultures, many different backgrounds, and working with people from very much diversity. So I remember running a kitchen in Australia, and it was at a missions base where we had 100 different people living in a house, all from various different cultures, and we were cooking a Filipino dish that night, which required like 8 heads of garlic. And I remember asking one of the Americans, "Can you mince this garlic?" And they looked at me like, "What are you talking about? All of that garlic?" And the Korean individual came running over, I'll do it, I know how to do it. This is easy to me." And you know, the funny thing is part of their culture is to cook every day. Garlic is an essential staple in most of their cuisine, and so he was very familiar with it, he was comfortable with it, and he could do it quickly. Whereas the American didn't necessarily know how to do that, or was shocked at me asking to do that. Another story that I have for you is in Guatemala City. We had this elderly woman, who would cook our meals for us, and there was a lime tree right outside of the window, and she made this chicken, and I remember asking her, "Please tell me how you made this is the best chicken I've ever tasted." And she looked out the tree and she pointed, she goes, "It's that." And she said, "I just squeezed so many limes on it, and there was rosemary and black pepper, and that was it." And she was utilizing these resources that were right outside of her window because she knew how to use them, right? So just like the Korean couldn't have used garlic if he didn't know how, the sweet little woman could not have made that chicken if she didn't know how to use a lime to cook with, right? And if she didn't know what flavors went together. So I want to take a look at today just this idea of how our culinary classrooms could look completely different if we focused on teaching skill rather than teaching our culture to our students, right? So it's easy to do that. We hand out recipes because it's easier to plan for one recipe instead of 8, right? So we hand out recipes. Today we're going to be doing a breads unit, for instance. So we give all the students the same recipe, right, out of ease. So I want to look at how would that look different if we did different breads. The British Heart Foundation gives a list of multiple different breads. So in Australia they eat what's called damper bread, which is cooked over the fire. It's just water, flour, and they throw in chocolate chips if they want something sweet, or they throw in nuts, or whatever they have, they throw in, wrap it in foil and throw it on the fire, right? So that's culturally respective bread that they're using. In Ethiopia, they make injera, which is kind of has a lot of air bubbles in it, right? So that's a different bread, and they actually pick up their food with their bread and eat with their fingers. So bread in Ethiopia is a huge staple. That's how they eat, right? So we have matzo that the Jews eat. We have lavash that's popular in Iran and in Turkey. We have soda bread, that's the national bread of Ireland. And of course we have what everybody knows of a tortilla, right? Mexico is popular for tortillas, Guatemala is popular for tortillas. And we have arepa, which is a small round piece of bread that is very popular in Venezuela and Colombia. So we see that we have all of these different kinds of breads, right? So if we're doing a bread unit with our classes, I want to talk about how it would look different if instead we did our unit on yeast, on flours, and leavening agents. And we talked about how those all work together, and then we gave our students the freedom to choose a recipe, whether it be from their own culture or a different culture, and talk about maybe where that bread came from and why it's important and how it came to be. And share that with their group members in a lab kitchen, and then taking that and teaching either their own culture or a different culture to students. And another aspect that could come into that is family history, asking their parents, asking their grandparents, what is a staple recipe in our family? What's something that we use? What's something that we eat a lot that maybe somebody else doesn't? Another example of this is onions. So we all know that onions can be used in almost anything, right? So according to SeriousEats.com, there are like 11 different kinds of onions. They're very easily modified, so there's continuously new breeds of onions being created. The National Onion Association breaks it down to yellow onions, red and white onions. They're seasonal, so you have your spring and your summer onions and your fall and your winter onions. So we have like the scallions, for instance. The white onion on the end with the long green at the end. You're going to see those a lot in your Asian cuisines. You're going to see leeks, which are similar but thicker and heavier. You're going to see those in your French cuisine, and they're typical in Chinese cuisine. Shallots, for example, are almost the most essential item in all Ethiopian dishes. You're going to find some variety of onion in every Ethiopian dish. Even they put it in their bread sometimes. So we can look at now, most of you might be saying, okay, well, I don't really have very much diversity in my classroom, ethnic diversity. So I teach at a rural school or whatever. My question to you is, are the kids who are eating off food stamps eating the same as the kids who have high income? Probably not. So within your classroom, whether you have ethnic diversity or not, you still have that opportunity to have those students share. While you may have some students who eat mayonnaise and cheese sandwich every day, while the other eats steak for lunch. You never know what people are eating, and you never know what normal is. So we have the opportunity to teach our students skills, to teach them skills that can be shared and it can be applied to any different culture or ethnic background. And that is the beautiful part of what we teach. By teaching these skills, we can help our students to be good members of communities by being able to utilize their resources, utilizing what's around them and what they have access to. And that's important as we take our students out of our classrooms and into the real world. They need to know. They need to know how to utilize their resources, and they need to know the skills, the basic skills. For example, if you have someone from, let's say, India living in western Kansas, they probably aren't going to know how to make a spaghetti squash or an acorn squash or various different fall vegetables, because that's not something that they have in their culture back home. And so as an educator, we can teach our students how to utilize those resources and how to spend less money when it's there and it's accessible, rather than buying something that might be imported in and might be a little more expensive. So I encourage you to continue thinking about diversity in your classroom as you're planning your lessons and as you're teaching your students skills and giving them those opportunities to really take those skills back to a culture and exploring that culture and how those skills play in to many different cultures, and learning that among their peers and learning that among their lab groups. And so I think there's lots of different ways that we can teach diversity in our classrooms and how we can highlight the diversity that's in our classrooms. And this is just one way that we can do that. And so I just want to say thank you for listening, and I hope that you can include some of this in your class.